Hello everyone, welcome back to Paws Trails webinar. So today we have another interesting photographer with us, Rupayan Datta from Kolkata. Rupayan is a wildlife photographer by passion and a developer by profession. He started his journey 7 years back and he's been into serious wildlife photography since 2017. So he have traveled to India, various places, various wildlife sanctuaries in India and Africa as well. And let me not take much time. Uh, Let me get Rupayan on the screen. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. How about you?
All good. So you're currently in Kolkata.
Yes, I actually work in Bangalore, but due to this COVID scenario, currently in Kolkata, I keep
Okay,
traveling back and forth, but yeah, like mostly work from home, so currently in my hometown.
great. Yeah. So let's start a small introduction about yourself to our viewers.
Sure. So, a brief introduction. My name is Rupayan Datta. I am from Kolkata, as I was mentioned, and I am a wildlife photographer by passion. So my love with the forest start way back when I was a child. So I used to see these documentaries on BBC and Nat Geo, and I was very intrigued by these documentaries. And my first foray into the forest was back in 2007 when I went to Kanha. That I think was my first proper safari experience. Luckily, unluckily, we didn't get to see the tiger, but the forest itself was so beautiful and it hooked me. So it was a long time after that when I finished my schooling and I got my hands on the first camera, my first DSLR. So initially, when I started as a photographer, it was not exactly wildlife photography. I started off with other genres, like exploring, like shooting whatever I can, and I was mostly into street photography those days. In when I was in my hometown. Uh, and I went to a few national parks initially, but it was not like a full-time wildlife photography. So I started that after I moved to Bangalore. So that was like when I started following this passion seriously. And since then, it's been a couple of years, and I've explored a couple of places in and around India. I once went to Africa,
Okay.
and yeah, so that's pretty much about it. And so what I love about wildlife photography. So let me, before I start on that, let me start with my presentation as well. As you can see my screen,
Yes.
that's excellent. Uh, cool. So coming to my gears. So these are the like the latest gears which I am currently using. A D810 7200, which is my personal favorite because it allows me to have a lot of freedom while composing an image. Nikon D5 1635 and a 400 2.8. Though I've mentioned it here, it's not exactly owned. So I usually rent this lens as and when I travel because with my work schedule, it's a bit difficult to manage time uh, to travel regularly. And there is always this important question of how important are the gears? And my answer to that is yes, gears are very important when it comes to wildlife photography. There are counter arguments which says that gears are also not important. Those are also relevant, right? Because so when I began as a wildlife photographer, there was no way I could even afford these equipments. So I started with the D5100 from Nikon. And very basic 7300 lens, and some of the images I've made with that are very memorable. So you can make like good images even with the most basic equipment, but the drawback and the limitations of these basic equipments are that they perform well when the lighting conditions are good. From my limited experience in wildlife photography, lighting conditions are almost never perfect. Like there are very adverse lighting conditions in which most of the actions happen, and since I am mostly leaning towards photographing mammals, the big cats, say lions or tigers, they are usually active during very early morning or the late evenings, and it in those times the lighting won't be perfect in the most probability, right? So in these situations, these equipments do come into play. I will discuss about this a bit more as we move through the presentation. And so when did I start? So I started my photography basically from 2013, 14. And let me take two questions together. The where did I start? So my first photographic journey began from Bharatpur. So that was like during my college days. That was my first trip with a camera and was very excited. Uh, Back then, I had no knowledge about any framing, composition, or even the species which I'm going to photograph. So that was a learning that before you are going to visit a place, you should learn about that place. Back then, I had no idea of that, and well, I would like to revisit that someday. And after that, so what do I consider a good photograph? Now, a good photograph is very subjective. It differs from person to person. From my experience, I have shown the same image I have clicked to two different people. One of them didn't like it that much, while the other one appreciated that. So it's a very subjective thing. But I remember one definition I read quite a long time back. Actually, I don't even remember the source of the definition, but it said that a good photograph can be considered to be any photograph which, even after 4 or 5 years of clicking, I am proud to have clicked that photograph.
Mhm.
So that was something which stuck with me. And since it's been like 4 years since I've started pursuing this seriously, I understand the significance of that statement, because if I look at my photographs 4 years back, I think hardly there are only two or three images I can say that okay, these are good images that I still feel proud about clicking. So since I'm still in a learning phase, like the learning curve is quite significant here, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of experience. So we are always evolving our styles, our compositions, our thought process, which goes behind making a good image. So that is where this thing comes into play. That the more we mature, the more we understand where we went wrong in the initial days, and that's okay. I guess like every failure is like a like a stepping stone, right? So
Yeah.
now coming to the next question, why do I want to click a photograph? Well, that depends actually. It also goes with the next question, that what or whom do I want to click for? If I'm clicking for myself, okay, so then I have the complete freedom. There are people who shoot for commercial purposes, for magazines, or for some shows, or social media. So most of us are like really active on social media, and uh, it would be a lie if I said that social media did not influence my style of photography in a certain way. It does for me. But why do I want to click a photograph is basically because it makes me happy, whatever makes me happy. So what I want to actually portray through the photographs are the natural emotions of these animals. So back when I was young, I used to visit zoos, and there you can easily see like a lot of animals, right? But those animals, we couldn't like get to know those animals, we because they are in a caged environment, so they are not their natural self. But when we are seeing them out in the wild in their homes, they are at ease. So
Mm.
that is when I feel that we get the best images. And for me to be able to portray these emotions, these natural moments, like that is a privilege for me to both witness that those moments and to be able to showcase them through my photographs. So let me start with the presentation. So I'm starting with some of the places I visited. Like this is a picture from Masai Mara from my trip in February of 2020. That was before the COVID scenario began in India. And like this was probably the my most favorite moment from that trip. It was a farewell gift because this was the last day of our trip in Masai, and I was feeling a bit sad that the trip was going to be over so soon. And just then, just as we were about to return to the camp, maybe say in our half an hour or so, we came across this pride of lions walking on the road. And the highlight feature of that, they had two cubs with them, and those cubs, especially this small one in the picture, was like very energetic, and he see it seemed like that he wanted to lead the pride. So that is the emotion that I actually wanted to capture through this photograph, that despite there being so many like adult lions there, the mother was there, some other members of the pride were also there, but this little guy was always at the front of that, and it was an absolute joy to watch. Like I don't think even my pictures can present the full emotion of what it is to actually witness this in the wild.
Yeah, that's an interesting frame.
Coming to one more location, so this was shot in Amboseli. So this is also in Africa, and this was just after my Maasai trip. So we went from the Maasai to Amboseli, and it is known as like the land of the jumbos, and for a reason. Like if anyone wants to witness elephants in the wild, I think that's probably one of the best places in the world. Like I have seen so many elephants during my 2 days. That's more than all my trips like calculated together before that. And Amboseli has a very beautiful, like backdrop. On one side is the beautiful Mount Kilimanjaro, and if the weather is clear, if the Kilimanjaro's views are clear, then it makes some opportunities from some absolutely amazing frames. And even the other side, like you can see the reason, like this was taken actually quite close. So I had taken this with a 7200, and the reason why this picture appeals to me is the layers in the background. So if you can see, like there are a lot of colors and the layers in the background, very soft, and soft light allows to portray us the entire scene. So this was one, and this is from India. This actually is my last trip before the second wave of COVID hit. This was shot in Bandhavgarh, and this is probably one of my most favorite images from that trip. So this was the first tiger sighting in Bandhavgarh which we had. The early morning safari, we came across this tigress actually. So she was like sitting inside the tall grass. And
Hmm.
so here is the point, like when she was sitting inside the tall grass, the like our jeep was at like such a distance that I could use my tele lens to get
Hmm.
the sort of image, like the tigers looking at us through the grass, so that sort of image. But once I had clicked that image, there was like I was not finding anything else that I could compose, and I was hoping against hope that the tigress would get up. And even before that, I switched to my 7200. The reason was that if the tiger got up, immediately the situation becomes that the frame becomes too tight. So because when the tiger gets up, and if it hits the frame and it's not like looking at us, right, it's
Yeah.
like in a horizontal plane, so immediately we need more space. And it was very early morning and the light was beautiful. It was open grassland. So what I wanted was to basically make a tiger frame, walking or otherwise. What I did not expect that it would stretch like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like an added bonus. And probably this is like my most favorite shot from the trip. This is another shot from Masai. So like I love making this type of images, and the reason if that depends also on the type of place I am visiting. When in India we have like dense forests, so our horizon visibility is quite limited inside the forest unless you go to say grasslands like Tal Chapar or places like that. But sorry, grasslands like Velavadar, I mean. But other than that, in Africa this is like extreme advantage that we have extreme visibility of the horizon, and this allows us to compose this type of frames where the animal is just on the horizon. And in the case of giraffes, like the I think the most appealing part about the giraffe's photograph is its legs, because it has a very tall and lanky structure, right? So
Yeah.
if we can get if the giraffe is on the horizon, we get the legs. So immediately that the photograph transforms itself, I believe. And
Cool.
along with that, we had some heavy rains prior to this, so the clouds were there. It was a very dramatic sky, and like this is like what I thought was making a good impactful image. Coming to my another type of shots which I really love taking are the vertical ones. Now there the reason I chose these two photographs is because they are like based on the different situations. Like if you see the one on the right, so the reason for placing the lion at the bottom is because I have a beautiful backdrop which I can utilize for my framing. But if you see the one on the left, the problem was that the light was very good, but there were a lot of distractions in the background. So if I were to put the lion in the bottom of the frame, all those distractions would come into play. And
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like a habitat image or close up, always like the main point of photograph is a subject, right? So we should
Yeah.
be careful in our framing to like so that the viewers would not look towards any other distractions but towards the subject itself. So the lion in the right also, this is actually the first male lion I have seen in the wild. So there are very fond memories because he and his brother, so they are very famous lions in the Maasai. This guy passed away due to old age uh, early this year. But like we had spent a lot of time with them. They had given us some spectacular shots, and I have a shot in the next slide which shows him and his brother out on a patrol. Yeah. So these are like the type of frames I covet a lot. The one on the right, uh, this was actually like the reason why I took a habitat shot in this. So one of the I think the frequent problems that we face is that there are many vehicles, and if there are any vehicles in the background, we can't make very good images because any vehicle will be a distraction in the frame. But when these two guys were walking towards us, the thing which struck me the most was that the background was completely empty. So I could like showcase the kingdom of the lions without any like human element inside that. So that was the reason for framing it in such a way. And the giraffe shot was again like which I mentioned, like it's on the horizon, the legs are visible, you have a dramatic sky, and since the backdrop is so pleasing and there are no like distractions to the background, so Hence, I placed the giraffe on the lower end of the frame. Coming to the black and white images. So what I felt was Africa is a tremendous place and has many opportunities for composing many black and white images. Now, there are a couple of types of black and white images that we shoot depending upon the situation. The first one is the chill out. The chill out shots like this, like our vehicle was positioned perfectly because we were anticipating the cheetah to basically climb this log. So what had happened was that prior to this, the cheetah had a failed hunt and she was desperately looking for food. And during this times, they usually try to survey the surrounding for any opportunity. And that's why we were positioned perfectly. But the only problem was that the sky was very overcast and the lighting situations were not perfect for a normal shot. So instead, what I did was basically play around with the composition a bit. And the two things that made me compose this black and white image was specifically the grass blades, because we have the dark grass in the dark foreground, but the grass blades on the horizon, so they add a very nice element to the picture, along with the cheetah which is like climbing a log. The next type is something I first actually experimented with in Mara. So uh, we should not only like compose black and white images when the lighting conditions aren't perfect. There are situations when the lighting conditions are extremely good, but we and they can make for extremely dynamic black and white images as well. So we have like two like grayscale images here where we don't have like shallows or low key or high key, but even in perfect light they make for very dramatic images. If you see the giraffe on the left, it's from the same sequence of this image, right? So you can see that the lighting conditions were perfect for a color photograph, but at the same time, uh, the same scenario had a beautiful opportunity for a grayscale black and white.
Yeah.
Same goes for the lion on the right. So it was early morning. The sun was just about to rise. There was beautiful slanting light, and on the face of the lion, and it made for a very nice portrait. One thing about black and white images, the challenge which I feel that all the color goes away, right? So we are all left with something to engage the viewers when I'm basically seeing a black and white photograph. And when the colors are not there, the thing which I think makes or breaks a black and white photograph is background, the immediate background behind the subject. The problem is that if I'm suppose shooting say two elephants and behind that there is some green grass. Now when I'm shooting in color, the elephant's color body tone with the grass, with the deep green grass, will have a natural contrast. But the same thing when I'm portraying in black and white, it might be a distraction because the background might get too dark.
Hmm.
So that is something which I usually keep in mind while composing black and white images. And there are some creative ones we can always have, like this one. Both of these are actually shot during like the afternoon time, like late afternoon when the sun was like at an angle, but we were at the wrong angle, right? So if you say this like if I were to shoot a normal picture, the cheetah would have been totally dark. And the advantage with the subjects that they have this furry outline, right, which shows up beautifully when against the light, so you have some good backlit images. The other one is this, like i had a I had a pretty decent light, but there was nothing in the background. The sky the sky was very simply toned, like no drama in the clouds, and there was no color in the background elements due to the harsh light. So that is where I basically upped my evaluative compensation to make the background totally white and get a sort of high key image. So the basics to this image would be, I think, more than the shutter speed or the ISO settings would be to play with the evaluative compensation. So that is something I use a lot because so when the light is uneven on the background and the subject, so that is how we basically compensate for that. Okay, now coming to my most favorite sequence from India. This was from my last trip in Bandhavgarh. So there was actually a funny story around it. So just 5 minutes prior to this sighting, I was like complaining to my friend that I've been on a couple of trips for these years, and I've seen so many of photographs from my fellow photographers uh, about a tiger sitting in the middle of the road, a road blocked by a tiger. Like it's not that uncommon, but how come I have never faced this? And 5 minutes later, I came across this tiger sitting in the middle of the road. So, and the thing is that, like, she was actually sitting alone. We were clicking the pictures. Suddenly, the guide whispered, "There is another one." And then it was then that I noticed that there were cubs in the
Mhm.
bushes. So they were actually feasting on a kill. But these cubs are actually quite young, and most of them were very shy to come out, but not this guy. So this guy was the one who basically made this sighting so special. So he was not one to back down. He was quite aggressive, and he basically took it in turns. Like he was coming out and going in, and every time he would snarl at everyone. So one was this one, and the second one was this picture.
That's great.
So like every time, like this cub, I think even more than this pictures, it was an absolute joy to witness that. Like just a cub, like the mother wasn't even bothered much, but the cub was like, no, he would have none of it.
So
And
you asked for the roadblock and you got the block with cub.
yep, so that was a wish very quickly fulfilled. With an added bonus.
Yeah.
That was, and this was an unexpected sighting, like no prior warning calls or anything, which we
Mhm.
usually have, right?
Yes.
So this is also something I found, during my experience in the safaris. Sometimes the best sightings are the ones which happen unexpectedly. Like I don't know if it holds true. You maybe can put in your thoughts on this, but somehow I feel that is the case how it works for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this the one on the left is basically like it was like a mother and three cubs. It was a long sighting we had. The one on the left is actually the cub. Doesn't look like one because it's pretty grown, around a year or so. And one on the right is from like the same sighting. So we had like a long sighting where the cubs feasted on a kill. Then they walked along with the mother to the nearby water hole, and they took turns in drinking water. So the one on the left appealed to me because, like, I actually had planned to shoot like a wider scale, but the way this tiger was sitting so peacefully, and it seemed like he was like daydreaming. So that is the emotion that I wanted to capture. And for this type of emotion, what I felt was that rather than go wide, I prefer to zoom in quite a bit with the long lens. So that is how it like I feel the emotion is more portrayed, like better portrayed, I would say. And the one on the right, so we were actually on an elephant safari, and the problem was when I'm on the top of an elephant, that the angle of viewing is quite high. So I am not getting eye level shots. I am on above eye level. And when the tigers came to drink the water, so there were two things I usually did. I didn't include the other one in my presentation. So that was like a wide frame of all the tigers, the four tigers drinking together. And the next one, so what I thought was that because of this, a unique point of view, I had a very clear reflection of the tigress drinking the water from the water body. So now the problem with this is that once any say animal comes to the water body and starts drinking, immediately the water gets disturbed, and as soon as the water gets disturbed, it gets more difficult to get a good reflection. But I had ample opportunities to think about this because the four tigers actually did not come together to the water body, so they were like coming one by one. And by the time the other two came, and each was in a different spot, it was drinking water from a different spot. So by the time the third one came, I already had pre-visualized this type of shot. So which also like is a very important concept, like pre-visualization. We must visualize from beforehand like how we want the frame, because usually sightings are very quick. We don't get that much time to think on that, right? So if I suppose have some warning calls in the forest, and a tiger is expected to come nearby and maybe cross the road. So even before the tiger has arrived, like what I do is basically survey the surroundings. Sometimes do I need to take like a zoomed in shot, or do I need to take a wide? What are the factors that would come into play? How distracting is the background? That is something that would come into play. Then are there any jeeps on the other side? If the tiger is crossing, if there are jeeps on the other side, probably you can make different types of images. There might be distractions, but you can like image based on the tourism, like the wildlife tourism, right? It portrays that how what the scenario in the forests are. So there are many unique ways of composing this. But any sort of frame, like it's best like if we have some sort of pre-visualization. I know everything won't work out in the favor. In fact, most things won't work out in our favor, but it helps us have at least a baseline from where we can start composing the image. So this particular image is from my trip to Sundarbans, which is in my state only. But since I had started wildlife after moving to Bangalore, I had never actually gotten a chance to visit this forest. Now, this is a very unique type of forest. Like this is a mangrove forest, and I think this is likely a place where we have mangrove tigers, and it's a very different environment altogether. The behavior of the cats also here are very different, and sighting a tiger in Sundarbans is uh, like a matter of immense luck. And fortunately, I was blessed with two back-to-back tiger sightings on my very first day in the mangroves. So that was like totally fortunate. So this was actually the first moment that I saw the tiger. So this was my first tiger shot from the Sundarbans, and you can see like the forest itself is a pretty different, right? And there are no like usual safaris like in the rest of the forests, say in central India that we have. So here the only way to have the safaris is via the water body, via boats. And the only chance for us to see the tiger if it comes to the edge of any island. So this is like how the what I feel like how Sundarbans, how it depicts basically the environment of the Sundarbans. So you have this dark, impenetrable like mangrove forest, and it is very difficult to actually see the tiger unless it comes out into the open. For all we know, that there was a tiger sitting by where we had just passed, and no one had even seen it. It was actually the case, like the second tiger sighting. So I think after the sighting, we were like on our way back. The day was coming to a close, and we were having tea on the boat, and we were relaxing. We were very thrilled to have seen a tiger. And suddenly, when the boatman shouted, "Another tiger!" like we picked up our cameras and was searching for it, but it took me 30 seconds to even realize where the tiger was, because the moment I looked, I couldn't see anything. And so I kept on asking, like, where is the tiger? Then it actually moved. That was the moment that I could understand that where it actually is. So that is how, the tigers in Sundarbans are. They're very secretive. They're not the tigers of central India, where they're very used to, vehicles and humans, and they come in very close, contact at very close quarters. Here we usually maintain the distances, and it's a significant distance actually. So this was actually from the second tiger sighting in the Sundarbans. The first one was a very dominant male, and it did not actually bother much about the boats. So we can say that there were like two boats, but it didn't even give us leave alone a second glance. It didn't even give us one glance. So it just crossed a channel, and it disappeared again into the forest. But this one was actually a sub-adult, and we could see that. So when the boatman had spotted this tiger, it was inside this forest on the right side, and it was actually very curiously looking at us. And we had thought that we would get maybe assume that he wanted to cross the channel, but I think he was still like exploring on his own, and he was a bit confused about the boat, and it went back in. So it didn't cross the channel, but it gave us like a beautiful, head turn just for a split second before it disappeared again into the forest. Apart from the big cats in the mangroves, the other thing I love are the birds in Sundarbans. There are many colorful birds. Uh,
Beautiful.
so this is like a brown-winged kingfisher, I which I saw. This was actually just before the first tiger sighting. In fact, where we were clicking this brown-winged, in the forest behind that we can see that is where the tiger was initially.
Mhm.
Just that we didn't know it. It came out after say 10-15 minutes, but some of these birds are absolutely colorful. So these is like the brown-winged kingfisher, and these are some of the other kingfishers, not this one, like the black capped, and this one, which is the colored kingfisher. So these are like usuals in the mangroves. And for me, actually seeing all of these three species was a first for me. And then we have peregrine falcon, which is like the fastest animal on earth. So there are a lot of birding opportunities in Sundarbans as well. Though I am not a very dedicated birder, honestly, but like I mean, who can resist clicking these beauties, right? Yeah. So as I was saying, like there is a reason like Amboseli is known as a land of rainbows, and it's an absolutely beautiful place to see elephants. Added to it is the backdrop of this Mount Kilimanjaro, and we were very fortunate to have a very clear weather in the early morning. So this is actually shot in a very early morning, and this was shot like a bit later in the day. So we had all this, big, like tribes of elephants who are coming and crossing the road in front of us. It was an absolute gem to witness. And this was probably like one of my very favorite shots from Amboseli, though it doesn't have the Kilimanjaro in the background. But just like the two things that struck me was, one is like the size difference you can see. between the baby and its mother. And other one was basically this trunk, the
Yeah.
teeth, basically, not the trunks, the
Yeah.
teeth. So, like, it spoke to me like, the mothers are protectors, warriors who can protect their young ones at any cost. So that is the emotion that I felt when I was seeing this, and that is a very emotion I wanted to capture through this photograph. So this is one more of those emotional pictures which I have. Like, so it was during the golden hour, just prior to that, actually. Uh, so this young guy was just, prancing around, enjoying himself, and the looks on his family seems as if, the joy when any parent watches their child have the first steps. So this is the kind of emotion that I try to portray through this particular photograph. Now comes like a couple of photographs about the subjects which I love watching the most, more than even photographing, are the smaller animals. So these are like the two lion cubs which I was talking about initially, the in my like last day at Mara. So you can see that always these guys are in the front.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was absolute joy to witness that. And this one, both the shots are
Oh.
actually from Bandhavgarh. The one in the right, that was shot in very early morning, so we were tracking one tiger. We were tracking some footprints actually, but the tiger never came out, but we came across this monk is sitting on the top of a fence, and the light was falling so beautifully on its face that it almost beggared us like to take an image. And if you see, this is again that same from the same sequence. Like when this was probably the part when it realized that, okay, I am too small to scare anyone yet. So it was just keeping watching us from behind its mother before its mother actually got up and went away. And capping it off with one baby elephant pic from this is also from Amboseli. And I think I forgot the heading which I gave to this picture. It was something like that: friends come in all shapes and sizes. Because it seemed to me that he was trying to bond with this egret, and it should be pretty scared if it comes too near. One thing which I also want to mention, like I think the most challenging part about photographing elephants are its ears,
Hmm.
because the most impactful images are the ones in which both its ears are open. So whether
Yeah.
it's like an Asian elephant or an African elephant, doesn't matter. It's all the same. I think like most of my shots of elephants like wasn't to my liking, because everything is perfect, the lighting is perfect, the scene itself is perfect, but some of the elephants have one ears closed, and it looks like oddly disproportional. So yeah, that is, I think, one of the like the key points of taking an impactful like elephant image.
True.
Yeah, coming to some of these frames, we all know, like the some there are some, say, I wouldn't say rules, more like guidelines in terms of framings and composition, and one of the most well known is the rule of thirds. So
Yeah.
I won't go into much technical details about it. I think all people are familiar with it, but these are the type of images like where I've actually went against that rule or the guideline, I should say, and I still managed to get some images which I liked. So putting them at the extreme of the frames, so this also like helped me in putting a different perspective. So if you like see this, like this red-billed oxpecker on the top of it, like a giraffe. So I remember the caption I gave. It was like a mountain to climb. So that is what I like. It seemed to me when I was shooting the pic that this. It seems that there is a very difficult road ahead. So I take this I like to take this sort of emotions from our lives and basically portray it through the animal behavior.
Mhm.
So also this one, uh, you can see that the subject is placed at absolute the end of the frame, like absolute
Yeah.
corner of the frame. But the what I wanted to like portray was, look both ways before crossing a road, something like that.
Mhm.
So it seems like it is checking and that there are no disturbances before it crosses the road. So this is like a type of framing that if you see the when we were actually seeing it, it's not that we can see only this part of the subject, right?
Yeah.
Because beyond the tree the rest of the subject is also visible. So that was one reason that I didn't want the rest of the subject. I just wanted the face of the subject, so that's why I
Mhm.
placed it in the corner of this frame. And so yeah, these are like some of the images, like my favorite images, I should say, regarding where I've gone against the rules based standard guidelines of composition, and I still managed to get something good out of it. Now, coming to the point which I was initially discussing about the gears, right? So
Yeah.
how important are the gears? So these are the type of images where a good camera and a good lens is necessary, because all of these are shot in extreme low light conditions where the ISO, I think, if I remember correctly, for each of these images, it was way above 3000,
Okay.
at least above 3000, 4000. Now, when I used to do the same, so initially I had a D5100 and I moved on to D7100. So all these crop sensor bodies, when I used to shoot anything beyond, say, 2000 ISO or 2500 ISO, the images I got were not usable.
Mm.
Actually, a lot of noise, and if I want to underexpose the image and correct that later, even then there would be a lot of noise in the shadows, right? So
Yeah.
these type of things would crop up, and I think the combined ISO performance of the full frame DSLRs along with the 2.8 apertures is what helped me make this image. And yeah, so the one in the on the right side, the line in the rain, so this was also like a pretty high ISO shot. And the one on the left is where we actually need uh, at least a decent frames per second from our camera body, because these are like fast action shots, and
Yeah.
it is not possible for us to understand beforehand which frame would be the most perfect. So I think
Mm.
like there were lots of frames I discard, not because it was not in focus, but there were some obviously which were blurry and not in focus, but this particular is because everything is okay with this pic. Like you can see the angle, the head turn of the bird, because mostly what I saw was when I came back and I was browsing through the series, the either the bird's head was facing that other way, or uh, you know uh, it was the feathers and of the bird were not very prominent due to its turn, its the angle. And also this particular like this is a Jackson's widow bird, and this was a very difficult subject to shoot. In fact, I think in terms of technicalities, it might have been one of my most challenging images. The sole reason is that there was some it was like the rainy season in Mara, so the grass was quite tall, and when this Jackson's widow bird was sitting inside the grass, we couldn't see it. So we could see only for a split second while it actually jumped up. And so the focusing was difficult, because what I was trying initially was to just focus immediately and shoot. After a while, I realized that that was not probably going to cut it. So what I did instead was first few, and it kept one characteristic which I observed about this bird, that it kept on jumping up and down in the same place. It was not it jumped at one place and it went to another place and was jumping. It kept on repeating almost in the same plane. So what I did was, in the next 3 or 4 jumps, I did not actually click the shutter. What I did was just focused it on that plane. I just tried to hit a correct focusing plane. Once it is there, I just upped my aperture a bit, because if there are any minor, changes in the plane, if I keep a very low aperture, then the problem is it will come out blurry. So just to increase the field of the depth of field, that is where I just upped my aperture a bit. And the next time it jumped, I got this in perfect focus. So then I was getting continual shots in perfect focus. Also, which brings me to my the focusing technique, that this was something I didn't know when I started out, and I made a lot of mistakes also. But ultimately, I switched over to back button focusing, which is basically having like a separate dedicated button. Once
Yeah.
I got hold of this back button focusing, I never actually went back to traditional method, because
Mm.
this gives me a lot of freedom to recompose our shots. So this is where this is like a classic example of where the normal focusing system wouldn't work, right? Because each time I half press the shutter button, the focusing
Yeah.
system would override it. But
Mm-hmm.
by basically focusing beforehand and disengaging the back focusing button, I know that my focus will not shift until I shift my camera.
Mm.
So that is one of the aspects of this image. And yeah, finishing off with basically one image from Bandhavgarh. So this was again a kind of image where I would prefer the higher end gears with the high frames per second, because these is like very fast action. And like uh, unless we have the proper gears, it would be almost difficult, or like almost impossible, I should say, to get this type of image. That is something my secondary body on which I usually use my 7200 lens is the D810. The D810, while being an excellent body in other things, like its FPS is a bit slow. So this is probably where I would not ever use a D810, something like a D850 or D5. I am talking from the Nikon perspective, but yeah, like using something with average of say at least 10, 12 frames per second would definitely help.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's all from my side. I had uh, so yeah.
That's great. Lovely pictures, man.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, we have few questions which you can answer.
Sure.
The page is asking, what lens do you use most for your wildlife?
Um, Mostly if I want to say, I usually use two bodies. Okay, so we I always have
Yeah.
two lenses with me. So one would be like something like a 400 or a 500 lens,
Okay.
which we use for when the subjects are at a distance. But my favorite lens would always be the 7200, because most of my memorable images are still shot with that lens, because it gives the it gives me a lot of freedom to basically compose whether the subject is far enough or nearby. So when nearby, I can easily zoom out to 70 and frame my subjects. And when it is far off, like the once if we get in Masai Mara, right? If we get in
Yeah.
far off subject, we can make a very minimalistic frames with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I would say definitely one combination of one super tele and one on the lower side. of the focal lengths.
Like 7200?
7200, 2470, yeah, like
Okay.
2470 also is like a very good option.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, how much research do you do on the animals or location before you go to photograph?
Honestly speaking, I would love to do much more than I usually do. Sometimes my work schedule doesn't permit that much time. But yes, some amount of research is definitely necessary. Like, firstly, where am I going and what type of environment it is? So, uh, you will get different types of animals and images, whether you are going in a desert area or you are going on the grasslands or inside the forests, right?
Mm.
So one thing which I personally like is basically whenever I go to any place, so I go through the profiles of the senior photographers who are usual here,
Okay.
and I try to gain an idea like what type of basically environment I am going to face.
Yeah.
For example, even the environment will differ with seasons because, for example, if I consider something like a Bandhavgarh or Tadoba forest, one problem is that like if we go in the monsoon, like the we have a green forest and say any tiger comes out, like it's a automatic contrast. So we can have say pictures showing the background as like the entire forest along with the subject. But I have faced this problem in both in Kabini also and also in Taroba and Bandhavgarh, that during the summers it is very dry.
Hmm.
And if we have a say leopard or a tiger, which is not on the open but rather on the side, clicking a habitat image is very difficult. I guess it's almost impossible because they blend in very well with the surroundings.
Okay.
So there are a lot of distractions. So these are the type of things I usually look into, like what gears should I carry. Uh, like like Sundarban's subjects are well far off, so i
Mm.
i would probably want to have a 600 millimeter or something like that.
Okay.
Whereas places like in Africa, the subjects come quite close, right? So that is how our choice of equipment and everything else is going to be made.
Yeah. Great. And how much time do you usually spend photographing wildlife?
Again, much less than I would want to, and COVID hasn't been helping either in this. But yeah, I try to go at least, like, you don't always need to go to national parks to do wildlife photography. There are like uh, places nearby your hometown, I'm pretty sure, where you can find some form of wildlife. You might not find tigers or lions, but there are many subjects which you can want to photograph. For example, I personally haven't like yet got a chance to explore much into macro photography. But if anyone is pursuing macro, I think your the house garden is a very good place to start. So try to keep up. I try to keep up like the continuity. Not always possible, but at least though it doesn't involve a daily practice for me, but definitely I go out as much as I can, I would say.
Okay. The next question is, in addition to lots of practice, what is your best tip for getting tack sharp images?
Uh, that there are lots of things actually based on the focusing mode and all, but one thing I would stress upon is something which I personally haven't done yet because I prefer a different method. But get a good tripod if you are planning to use a heavy lens. So I prefer using bikes because always in Indian forest, the jeeps do not allow us to set up our tripods, right?
Yeah.
But uh, I have seen a remarkable difference because in Africa, in the vehicles are quite large, right? And we have this, we can have beanbags on both sides. And when
Yeah.
I was photographing with 400 2.8 handheld versus when I photographed it, on a stable support, like so
Yeah.
either it's a tripod or like a beanbag, the image sharpness was remarkable. I faced this problem during Sundarbans also. I actually
Okay.
had no equipment with me, but handling a 600 millimeter lens on a moving boat is something I should have been more wary about, I would say. So a
Yeah.
tripod would have immensely helped there.
Okay. Yeah. And what photographer or photographers inspired you?
I can't name one. There are lots of photographers. It actually depends on what type of photography you are looking into. Right.
Yeah.
So each photographer has its own have their own styles and genres. So if you want to look at black and white, so there are people who shoot only black and white wildlife images. Uh, to name a few, I think Federico Veronesi and Graham Purdy are probably my favorite. Uh, and in India, I follow a lot of photographs. Some have their own very creative styles.
Yeah.
So if you want to go explore just creative photography, there are a different set of photographers. If you want to explore you know macro photography, then there are different types of photographers. So I wouldn't name anyone, but it's very subjective who will like whose photograph and not. But
Yeah.
I just mentioned the two names because I follow them specifically for black and white photography. The others might be mixed, but these are the two I look forward to when I'm basically pursuing black
Great.
and white.
We have a last question. What is a typical day for you when you are in the field?
That would depend on the field, but like it differs from place to place. Like a typical day in Mara. So in Mara, we do not have like timing restrictions in between, right? You can shoot the entire day from dawn till dusk.
Yeah.
So there, like uh, we basically, when in the early hours of the morning, there are a lot of activity, and we there are a lot of shootings and sightings and happening. And when it is basically the wee time, we also take in the wee hours of the afternoon, we also take a little nap maybe, because even the cats are napping at that time. All the
Yeah.
animals are also napping, so why not us? The on the other side, if we are talking about Indian forests, so Indian forests, unless we opt for a full day safari, which some parks allow, so we have very restrictive timings, right? The morning safaris and the afternoon ones.
Yeah.
So there, it's all about like, we are always waiting for something to happen. I think that's the best way to do it. Like typical day would be, just getting up, going to the gate as fast as possible, and then hoping to
Yeah.
see some activity in the forest, because in Africa, like it's open, right? So uh, we can see beforehand, maybe like whatever, if something is there. And
Yeah.
the difference with Indian forests is like it's too dense. You don't know. Like I was talking about that tiger, right? That
Yeah.
the one on the roadblock. Okay, completely unexpected. Like we're just going through the forest, and suddenly the driver stopped the car and he said, "Look, tiger," and there was absolutely no prior warning. So a typical day would be lots of disappointment. Be ready for it. Wherever you go, I'm pretty sure that I think that's the part of wildlife photography, that it
Yeah.
requires a lot of patience, lot of perseverance, and includes a lot of fair share of disappointments as well.
Yes. That's all the questions so far we have.
Because
Yeah. And thank you, Rupayan, for the wonderful presentation, sharing your images and your knowledge with us.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You're welcome. So hopefully we'll uh, see you soon with some other exciting images and stories from your side.
Definitely, that would be my privilege.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you soon.
Bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye
See you soon.
bye. So that was Rupayan. Wonderful photos. I hope you guys had a good time watching the photos and listening to the stories. We have some good comments also for his pictures. So that's it for the day. We'll be coming up with another session maybe next week. Until then, take care. See you soon. Bye bye.